I'm sorry, test 5 on base, 30. And we are where it says, Rabbi Yossi bar Boon. What? No, we didn't get that far. Rabbi Yossi bar Boon.
I'm sorry for interrupting. Before you start, I have a question about Mishnayos.
Better be quick. Yes.
Letters.
Okay. So again, Loitir Pasbiro, Rabbi Yossi Boon, Rabbi Yossi Boon, Loitir Pasbiros, the only been Pasbiros, El Maus Ben Mayim Bilvad, only in order to fill water. That means there has to be water. In other words, if there isn't water between the Pasbiros, you can't use them. Bo Mayim B'Shabbos, if the water is not there when Shabbos began, right? When Shabbos basis, so when Shabbos began, it was prohibited. You can't fill up any water. Chorva Be'er was, let's say, on the middle of Shabbos, the spring dried up. Shabbos basis. It's interesting. Once Shabbos begin with permissibility, so the Shabbos doesn't lose its permissibility. You can continue using the Pasbiros for that Shabbos, even though there's no water to draw out of the well. Okay, so it's like, as long as when twilight occurred Friday afternoon, you had there was water, that suffices. Rabbi Yerushalmi Omar Rabbi Nasa Shal. Rabbi Yerushalmi said, Rabbi Nasa asked, Ma'ala Talta ben Apasim. Let's say, you have pictures?
Oh, yeah.
Picture Lamed over here. Let's say there's a thickness to the pasim, right? That they're thick, right? In other words, you just took 2 of the 4, but they're 4 here. So and they're thick. So can you carry within these 2 dotted between the lines, which are dotted lines? Okay, can you carry in between them or not? Well, that's going to be. Well, that's going to be actually. You're right, but nonetheless, this is it's still neutral territory. That's what so it's like a makom patur. That's what I was going to say. Okay, Rabbi Yerushalmi Omar Rabbi Nasa Shua Ma'u Talta ben Apasim. Neymar, let's say as follows: Im yesh ben zelazeh arba tefachim. If the width of that threshold, so to speak, is 4 tefachim, then it's, as you say, it's forbidden to carry there, because then it's a carmelis in and of itself. It's in and of itself, right? So then you're now to carry the kiskupa and asura. If not, if there's less than 4 tefachim between the post, right? It's narrower than 4 tefachim. Kiskupa muteris. Then it's like a threshold which is mutter. In other words, it's mokum ptur because it doesn't meet the parameters of a karmelis. Mutter lekan, and the principle of mokum ptur we all know is you're allowed, the people from Rishus Harayim can put stuff there, and the people from Rishus HaYachim can put stuff there, as long as they don't go through from the Rishus Harayim to the Rishus HaYachim. Okay? Tani, we learned Yeshnon ke'eser amos. The gap between the 2 pasim on each side is 10 amos, right? Divrei Meir. Okay, yeah, you get up to 10 amos between the pasim. Rabbi Yehuda Omer k'shlosh esrei u'karba esrei. Rabbi Yehuda says between 13 and 14.
Oh, miserable. Sorry.
It's okay. It's between 13 and 14. According to Rabbi Yehuda, the gap between the pasin is between 13 and 14. It's actually 13 and a third. How do we make that reckoning? It should be para. The cow itself, it says pada. We're on the Tesfah and base just before the Mishnah. It says pada, but it should be para. The cow itself is amo mechza, is an am and a half, and there are 8 cows. So 8 times 1.5 is 12. Vama benayin. Besides that, there's an amma of the yoke between the 2 groups, because the cows grow in 2 groups, right? So that makes it 13. Besides that, the way Rabbi Yehuda learns is that some of the cows, 4 of the cows are going in and 4 of the cows are coming out. So they need more room. So therefore, it's slightly more than 13, between 13 and 14 amas. According to Rabbi Yehuda, there are exactly 6 cows. 6 times 1.5 is 9, right? And an additional 1 amma for the yoke, and they're all going one direction, so it's 10 amos, right? But Rabbi Yehuda, those is going in two directions, so it's 8 cows, so it's 8, again, it's 12 plus 1 for the yoke, and slightly more because they have to pass each other, so that's 13 and a third. Okay? Mutal akiv lebear, you're allowed to put the pasim as close as you want to the bear. Uvachete pararosha v'ruba bivnim v'shoisa. The minimum distance, however, which you must maintain, is an area for a para to have its head and the majority of its torso within the pasibiros and drinking, and the shiur given in the bavli for that is 2 amos. So the pasim must be at least 2 amos, and the pasim must be at least 2 amos distant from the well on all sides. Okay. Mutalachi koshu b'vachi b'pasim. You're allowed to make the pasibiros much larger as long as at regular intervals you have straights. In other words, you made these much further apart, so then you have to put straight posts in the middle, right, in order to make up the area. Rabbi Yerushalmi bar Rabbi Yitzchak said, "V'hu shiur k'shir hazeh." Once the shiur is 2 amos, you have the proper distance of 2 amos. Afilu gamo kula b'chutz muter. Even if you have a camel which stretches its neck and it itself is standing completely outside the pasibiros, that's okay. Whereas the shiur is the head and majority of a cow. But then you don't have to have the head and majority of the animal that you're giving to drink within the pasibiros. As long as you have that shiur, even if the animal question is a camel which cranes its neck in, that's okay, right? If on the other end, however, you have less than 2 amos on each side of the well, so then if you gedi, even if you have a small animal like a goat, which is kula bifnim, which is completely inside the pasibiros, also it is forbidden. Again, the shiur is essential that you have at least 2 amos, and once you have those 2 amos, it doesn't matter the size the animal is, but those 2 amos are minimum. Tana Rishim Elazar Omer Mole Gomo Vigomo. Yerushalmi Eruvin says that you need the extent of the camel, vigamal, and the gamal actually means the camel driver. So it sounds like it's a much larger shiur than 2 amos, right? Because it sounds like you need them for a camel. Ask more Mao Polik, does he argue? No. He says no. Because the nature of a cow is to extend its neck. It's a short neck, but it extends it. Hagomolo came savara. The nature of a camel is to contract its neck. Even though it has a long neck, it contracts it. So therefore it comes out that the shiur of the camel with the camel driver and the shiur of the head and majority of the para are both the same shiur, and that is 2 amos. Okay? Says Ma'at boy. Why do you need these 2 amos altogether? Ve'ain para omedes b'shus harabim. You can't a cow stand b'shus harabim v'ochel b'shus yachin to eat in b'shus yachin. In other words, what do you care? Why need the majority of the torso of the animal inside the pasibiros? Any animal can stand b'shus harabim, even with b'shus yachin. That shouldn't be a problem. Rabbi Yisrael said no. Tamon over there, which means in the Yerushalmi over here, but over here. Buhu the mafsiklei. Here it's really, I think it should be must speak, but the same idea. Here he's giving the animal to eat. Because how is he giving the animal to eat? He's drawing the water out of the well. So therefore we're afraid that if the animal is not significantly within the confines of the well area, we're afraid he's going to end up taking the water outside the well area in order to give the animal to drink, right? That's why you need the head and the majority of the torso. But here, in other words, in the case of an animal is eating by itself, there, of course, the animal on its own can stand, but that's not our case. Now, al daiti Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Meir yumdim shutim. It's a very interesting thing which comes out from the Yerushalmi argues in the Bavli. According to the Yerushalmi, Rabbi Meir holds that if you make a larger enclosure like this, let's say, is that what you do is you make middle strips, right, of small short ones in the middle, right, which are straight, not double-sided. According to Rabbi Yehuda, the Yerushalmi says that's not permissible. According to Rabbi Yehuda, there's no such thing as a pashut. If you have a large area like this, you have to make larger diumdin. You can't actually use straights. Now the Bavli learns that both Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir agree on this, that you can use straights. Just Rabbi Yehuda doesn't require straights. Rabbi Meir, even the smallest enclosure requires straights. But this is something. Sorry. The Yerushalmi holds that Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda just argue on the shiur. They don't argue with the uses of straights or doubles. Single-sided or double-sided posts. But the Yerushalmi learns that's also out of contention. Right? Meir holds you can use single-sided posts. In fact, the Yerushalmi holds that Meir holds that you must use single-sided posts. Why is that? Because Yerushalmi held, we learned yesterday, that this is part of how you know that the case of Pasbiros is different, and nowhere else can you use Porutz Merubah Omed, more free space than standing structure. The way to remind yourself is to have two different types of posts, one of this type and one of that type. But again, according to Meir and the Bible, in the Yerushalmi, you may and perhaps have to use pshutim. According to Rabbi Yehuda and the Yerushalmi, you may not use pshutim at all. You can't use them. All of them have to be double-sided, not single-sided. So therefore, that's a point of contention with the Bavli, which holds even according to Rabbi Yehuda, when you expand the enclosure, you can use pshutim in order to fill in the gaps. Okay? Says the Mishnah further, Rabbi Yehuda Omer ad beis hasayim. Rabbi Yehuda says that which you're allowed to use the Pasbiros has a limit. Only a beis hasayim, which is 5,000 square amos. Amru, they said, not true. Lo amru beis hasayim ela begina b'karpaf. They only said a beis hasayim by a gina, meaning a garden, or a karpaf, or another type of enclosed area which is not made for habitation. Avlima yadir osara mukta, but if it's a useful thing, such as a corral or somewhere where you animal pen, or muktzeh, or a place which is designated to keep stuff, or chutz, or a courtyard, I feel once it's mukaf ladira, and certainly here would be the same thing where the well is, it's mukaf ladira in the sense that it's a usable area, not just a blank space. I feel base chamisha korin, even if it's very large, even area of 5 kor, feel base asora korin, mutter, it's all permissible. And what's allowed to distance oneself as much as one wants, again, according to Meir, this specifically, as long as you put, according to Meir, as long as you put in additional passing. So I don't know if it's so specifically according to Meir. According to Meir, you put in more pshutim. According to Rabbi Yehuda, you make longer diumdin. But the idea is you can make the pasbiros as long as you want, as large as you want, as long as you put in more passing in the middle.
We learned earlier about carpet, actually, which would have been yesterday.
Yeah.
Did the Yerushalmi add a requirement not in the Bavli that it's some of the year?
Not yet. They will.
They will?
Yeah. You had it. You saw it yesterday. Did I gloss over it? Did you want to learn the right to a block?
I think so.
Well, it's at the end of the parak.
Really? No. I certainly didn't learn the end of this parak. Samach le'ir, that's carpet. The notion of a carpet, the definition is it has to be nearby a city.
Here, right next here, next page. Test sign on base.
Well, I can't say I learned test sign on base. I have not. I thought I saw it earlier.
I mean, it's a Mishnah. It's a Mishnah. Yeah, we did, because it's a Mishnah.
Okay.
Not necessarily that I remembered from there, but it's a Mishnah. Okay, the Pasbiros might happen in the middle of the street, depends where your well is. So it says the Tanakama, who's Rabbi Yehuda, if it's in the middle of a highway, you got to move the Pasbiros aside. You can't have Pasbiros in the middle of a highway. Chachamim say you don't have to move it to the middle, out of the highway. Echad ber rabim, echad bar rabim. Around what can you make a pasabiros? Both around a public spring or a public cistern. Up there is really a well. Both around a public well or a public cistern, even though it has no source for the water. Uber yochid, and a private well. Also in pasim, all these three can get pasim. Avo lebora yochid, if it's a private cistern, then you can't use paspiros. Rather, also mechitza gavoa sar tvachim divrei Rabbi Akiva, you must make a wall for it which is 10 tvachim high. Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava Mer ein osim pasim el ber ram milvad. Only a public well can get paspiros. The shar, any other type of watering hole, osim chagura gavoa sar tvachim, needs a wall, literally a belt, but it means a wall which is 10 tvachim high. Rabbi Yochanan said, I have a contradiction. In other words, Rabbi Yehuda changed his mind, it seems. The Tzniya Tamar we learned over there. If you have bridges, which are through bridges, you know, they go there underneath it, you have a road going underneath a bridge. Here's your bridge. And here's let's draw it like this. And here's your road going under the bridge. Now this is Rishus HaRabim, this road. But this, nonetheless, you can carry under the bridge, and Rabbi Yehuda says because the bridge has a pitikra. It's got dimensions to its roof. Its roof has a thickness, and therefore you have two walls, right? The two walls on the sides of the bridge, right? And you also have the pitikra, which comes down on this side of the bridge and on this side of the bridge. So you have four walls. Now the main point here is that Rabbi Yehuda holds the highway can go through the walls. And when you say lo asu rabim u'mvat lemechitzta, the fact that the masses are walking through these walls under the pitikra doesn't cancel pitikra. You see that? So here, why does Rabbi Yehuda say you have to move the highway? Here Rabbi Yehuda said if the highway is running, if the paspiros is on a highway, right, that's no good, right? You have to move it to the side. Why? Just like we say the masses don't cancel this wall, the wall of the pitikra, let's say the masses don't cancel this wall, the wall of the paspiros. What's the difference between the two scenarios, right? That's Gemara's question. Again, the Tiyatamon if you have bridges which have a thoroughfare underneath, Metalting Tachteim Shabbos, you carry underneath them Shabbos, Rabbi Yehuda. So it says the Chachamim forbid that. Rabbi Lezer says Eino Muchlefes. Rabbi Lezer says no, it's not a problem. Rabbi Yehuda is consistent. Rabbi Yehuda said do Sovek Rabbi Yehuda because Rabbi Lezer holds like Rabbi Yehuda. That's why he reconciled him, and the Mag Rabbi Yehuda in fact said, this which you can carry under the bridge is not where there's a road here, but where there's an open area underneath, and the masses don't actually go underneath the bridge. So that's why. But if it's taka, there's a thoroughfare for the public, for the masses going underneath the bridge, then it's taka also to carry underneath the bridge. That does cancel the wall of the pitikra, and here too cancels the wall of the paspiros. Rabbi Yisrael said, I got a problem with this, because all over Shas, Rabbi Lazar is adjacent, literally, but here it means he follows in the footsteps of Rabbi Chia's Rebbe. And Tanya Rabbi Chia said, Ketzam Matir Mishus HaRabim. How do you make an Erev Rishus HaRabim? Now, actually, an Erev Rishus HaRabim proper requires doors. That's not what he's talking about. He's talking about a Mavi which opens into Rishus HaRabim. In other words, here's your Rishus HaRabim, and here you have opening into the Mavi, to Rishus HaRabim Mavi. Now this mavli is more stringent than regular mavli. A regular mavli which requires just a korah at the front, a korah going across the top, or a lechi coming off the ground. But this mavli is open mamish into Rosh Hashanah. So therefore the rabbim can come through here. And that's why it requires more of a stringency. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, lechi mikan v'lechi mikan. Rabbi Yehuda is consistent. Rabbi Yehuda says actually, need two lechayan. You normally only need one. He says you need two. One here and one here. Lechi mikan v'lechi mikan. Or koyer mikan. Oops, I made a mistake. Sorry. No. Rabbi Yehuda is consistent with all over. Rabbi Yehuda holds you need a lechi over here and a lechi over here. Okay, here also the mavli goes into Rosh Hashanah. So he holds it's really no different than a regular mavli. All you need is a lechi on either side, right? Or for that matter, he says, a korah mikan, or a korah across the top, right? Korahs go across the top on either side. So here you see clearly, Rabbi Yehuda holds loasi rabbi v'adli mechitza. I'm not concerned with the masses going through. Say it's sufficient nonetheless to have a lechi or a korah. That's all I need. Chachamim are slightly more machmir. Chachamim say lechi v'korah mikan. You can have lechi or korah on one side, and tzuras pesach mikan. You get tzuras pesach on the other side. So Chachamim more make machmir. They hold you need a tzuras pesach on one side, and a lechi or korah on the other side. But that's not what concerns. The bottom line is what Rabbi Chia said, named Rabbi Yehuda. Chia said, named Rabbi Yehuda, we're not concerned with the Asi Rabbi V'Adli Mechitza. There's one lechi suffices on either side. So how over here can he say that you need to, out here can Rabbi Yehuda say that you need to remove the Rishus HaRabim from between the pasim? He says over here that you don't need any of that. So says the one, I'll tell you. Kan be'eser, kan b'shlosha. So it depends how wide the opening is. Pas biros, how wide is the opening according to Rabbi Yehuda? How wide? No, that's right, Mayor.
13.
It has to be the other one, right? So it's 13 to 3rd. Pas biros, 13 to 3rd. How wide is the opening of the mavli? If the lechi suffices, how wide can it be? What's the maximum? It's the minimum. 10. So that's the dichotomy. He says over here, I have to move the pas biros because the pas biros are 13 and a third. And since they're 13 and a third, so therefore more people are getting through. So you have to move it out of the middle of Rosh Hashanah. Over there, it's only 10 amos. 10 amos, less people are getting through, so therefore I don't have a problem. Okay? That's the answer. Here it's 13. Now the words of the following rabbis argue. The following rabbis are Rabbi Yacham and Amora. Rabbi Yacham Rabbi Yeshua said Rabbi Yeshua Shal Abba, he asked his father, I don't know who the father was, Kamate Pirtzas HaMavli Al Daiti Rabbi Yehuda. How wide can the opening of this mavli in this picture be? We just got through saying it can only be 10 amos. His father told him, Amar lei mishlosh esrei. He said, no, you get up to 13. So it's a contradiction. One place we just said that it's that it's 10, and that's why lechi suffices. Now you're saying 13. So Rabban in the case they said a different shot. They said Tamon oimed rabba parutz. Here by this mavli, although you can't see it because I didn't draw it, there are walls here. There was a wall over here from whatever house is right here. And there's a wall over here as well. From whatever house is over here, right? So therefore you actually have, and then he put up a lechi over here and a lechi over here. So you actually have oimer rubel aparos. Why do you have oimer rubel aparos? Because you have at least 51% wall. You have 50% on the two sides and one more, slightly more, it's 51%. So that's why we're making, even if it's 13 and a third, because you have Oimer Rubel Aparos, and that cancels Rosh Hashanah. There's no problem with Rosh Hashanah once it's Oimer Rubel Aparos. Okay? Whereas over here, there's an interesting thing. Something I heard from Rabbi Vosner, I never saw from it before. for it before, that if you have Omer and Ruba, that cancels all Rishus Rabbi Rishus. And that's really what the Gemara is saying here. The Gemara is saying that here, Rabbi Yehuda is not concerned, even Rabbanan, they don't require doors or anything, just require Tzuras Pesach, because there's Omer and Ruba Laporitz. But by Pasipi Rose, there Rabbi Yehuda is Machmir. Rabbi Yehuda says, since it's not Omer and Ruba Laporitz, since it's Poritz Ruba Omer, right, because you have a lot of free space, you have 13 amas in the middle and only an amma on each side, so that's why you can't allow Rishus Harabim to go through the middle of it. Okay, so Omer and Ruba cancels the Rishus Harabim, Poritz Meruba does not. Okay? Ma ben bor Rabbi, ma ben bor Yochid. Now getting to the next topic in our Mishnah. What's the between a bor of the masses and a bor of an individual? Why is one mutter and the other also? According to Tanakama, who holds a bor of Rabbi is okay, bor Yochid is not okay. So what's the difference? Bor Rabbi yesh lo kol. Bor Rabbi, everybody knows that there's a bor there, so therefore both people won't make a mistake and extrapolate from possibly rose to some other scenario. I'd say just like here, Poritz Merubal Omed works, so too in any other scenario. Bor Yochid ain't lo kol, but not everybody knows about a private well, so therefore we can't allow that. Me'ato asked the Gemara if that's the case. I kept saying, well, here it's a cistern. According to Tanakamos, you can make it by a public cistern, not by a private cistern. Now the Gemara asks, Miato, if that's the case, that if there's a difference between a public and private cistern, afilu be'ero, you shouldn't be allowed to make for a private well either. And Tanakamos, you're allowed to make for a private well. But if the question is cold, so there's no cold. Nobody knows about the private well. So says the Gemara, I'll tell you. The bor of the masses, its waters eventually. Okay, Moshe changed the gears, so very important. By a public well, it's obviously a major well. The waters don't get used up, so therefore there will always be waters there, and that's why you can make a paspiros there, because they're not concerned it's going to dry up. Bor yochid. A bor of an individual may take out the ain, may mitzuyim l'chalos. Its water very frequently dries up, and then when it dries up, of course, you can't make paspiros. So therefore, in order not to put the situation in constant state of flux, they just say you can't make paspiros by the cistern. I kept saying by the cistern of an individual. Again, a cistern of the masses you can make a paspiros because there's a lot of water there. A cistern of an individual not, because it's going to lose its water. Okay? Rabbi Yaakov bar Acha and Amram, Rabbi Yaakov bar Acha, Amram, and Rabbi Yehuda b'Shem Shmuel said, look, Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava looks like Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, said you can only make paspiros for a be'er harabim, for a public well. Has to be both public and has to be a well. Okay? Says the Gemara, I'm Rabbi Yehuda bar Avui to Rabbi Masanyo. Rabbi Yehuda, the father of Rabbi Masanyo, said, Masti Somer can have a brisa which indicates this. The brisa says, Osim pasim lebiroyos. Biroyos means well. That's the way the plural of well. V'lo lebaros, it doesn't say, and it says not for boros. I guess it's all part of the Mishnah brisa. Osim pasim biroyos v'lo lebaros. You can make a well for passing for a well and not for cisterns. Ask him, well, wait a minute. V'otna, didn't we learn? Why is the price of making so sure of yourself? No, tonight did we learn our Mishnah? Rabbi Akiva himself holds that all you're not allowed to make a passing for is a private cistern, but a private well you can make a passibiros for, right? When it says biroyos in the brisa, does that preclude a private well? It just precludes cisterns. All right, fine. So it's not completely like Rabbi Akiva, but who says it's like Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, right? We know that they're opposing shittas which hold you can even use a pasin on a private well. And you have no raya from the brisa that you can't use pasin on a private well, because after all, private wells are also called beiros or birios, whatever you're saying. So it says, well, you know what, you're right. All we meant to prove from the brisa, all we can prove, It's not like Rabbi Akiva that that we can preclude a public cistern. It was Rabbi Akiva allowed making pasin on public wells, public cisterns, and private wells. Right? From the Bryce, I don't have a raya that you can't make it on private wells, even though Rabbi Yerushalmi Eruvin holds you cannot. But I do see it in the Bryce that you can't make it on public cisterns because it says biroyos. Kavasa, I see pasin biroyos lebe'er rabim. Concerning this, we learned that you can make pasin for biroyos means only for a be'er rabim, only for a. So from that, I can extrapolate that if it's not Rabbi Akiva, it's got to be Rabbi Yehuda. Right? Can't be Rabbi Akiva because Rabbi Akiva allowed you to make it on private wells and public cisterns. Well, here we see you can't make it on public cisterns. So it must be, there's no in-between shita. There's Rabbi Yehuda who holds only, Rabbi Yerushalmi holds only public wells, and there's Rabbi Akiva who holds both public and private wells and public cisterns. By virtue of a brisa which precludes public cisterns, it can no longer be Rabbi Akiva. So it must by default be Rabbi Yehuda. Okay? Basically what I just told you is the ship what the Radal says on the bottom. It's very confusing, the whole discussion here. But again, the Gemara say by process of elimination the brisa. The brisa only allows it on wells. And Rabbi Akiva, who's matir on a private well, is also matir on a public cistern. And the Bryce is clearly not being matir public cistern. So Bryce can't be going like Rabbi Akiva. It's got to be going like Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava. Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava said only public wells, and the Bryce says any well. So it must be that lav dafka any well means specifically public wells.
The distinction between cisterns and wells is that the cisterns aren't their own source of water.
They just gather rainwater, right? So they can dry out much more readily. Furthermore, Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava said, Hagida v'karpov shu shivim am v'shirayim or shivim am v'shirayim, a garden or a karpov, an open area which is 72 thirds, mukeves goder gavoa shlo asar tfachim, which is 10 tfachim, which has 10 tfachim of a fence around it, metaltim betochi, allowed to carry within it, uvach shlo yebo shomero based there, but it can't just be a enclosed area. It's got to have a house for a watchman or a apartment, or shetei smuchlir to be adjacent to the city. Okay, so it has to have some specific designated hukaf ladira aspect. Now we don't hold that we hold as long as it's based on sign or less, doesn't have to be mukaf ladira. But Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava said it has mukaf ladira even if it's only a base on sign. Marshu bar Nachman Shem Rabbi Yehuda said, where do we learn this 70 and 2/3 by 70 and 2/3? Michotzer Mishkan Lambu. We learned it from the courtyard of the Mishkan. Orech HaChotzer Mea, it says that the courtyard of the Mishkan was Mea Ba'amah, V'rochav 50 v'50. If it was 100 amos long, by 50 amos wide, 50 by 50. V'chamishim zimnin min mea, 50 times 100, 50 times. Zimni literally means times, like multiplying, right? 50 zimni min mea, 50 times 100, 11, that's 5,000. Okay, 5,000 square amos. How do I get that to work into the 70 and 2/3, 70 and 2/3? Mr. Zuger, field, strip geometry. Okay? Here. How do we get that to work? How do we get this to be 5,000? I'll tell you. Yerushalmi will tell us. Says Gemara, Shivim in Shivim. First we start with a block which is 70 by 70, right? 70 by 70. That's 4,900, right? Shivim by Shivim. 70 by 70 is Chamisha Alufin. Para means less. Para mea. 5,000 minus 100 meaning it's 4,900. Utzina we learned Shivim v'shiraim, and we learned that the shiur is 70 and change. The Tani Shmuel taught us, there's a word missing here, the Reb Chaim Kanievsky puts in, Shivim amo, shnei shlishay amo, shonu. Okay, it's 70 and 2/3 by 70 and 2/3. Okay, so how did the 2/3 make it up? They may have to make up the difference. Says the Gemara, let's try to figure it out. Shivim zuminim mean train plus seyom. You have 70 times 2/3, and Shivim zuminim train plus seyom. right? You have 70 times 2/3 over here, and 70 times 2/3 over here, right? Is that clear? Of course, we're missing this corner. We're going to come to that corner in a minute, right? So we have 70 times 2/3 over here and 70 times 2/3 over here. That's the Avdim Me'av Arboin Tlaseo, which is 140 thirds, and Me'av Arboin Tlaseo 140 thirds. I'm not sure exactly why the Bavli felt the Yerushalmi did that, but 70 times 2/3, and 70 times 2/3 is really 140 thirds and 140 thirds, right? That's very simple. Shein Tisha now, 140 thirds and 140 thirds, he makes the cheshbon for you. Mr. Zuger, 140 times a third plus 140 times a third equals 280 times a third, which equals 93 and a third. Okay, because you divide it by 3. That's the modern Israeli sign for division, right? Divide 280 and a third by 3, that equals 93 and a third. It's probably European. But in any event, so Shein Tishma Shlish. So we got 93 and a third. Now we're up to 49, 93 and a third. Right? So far we're closer, getting closer. 49, 93 and a third. Now we're still missing 6 2/3 to get up to 5,000. Okay. Says the Yerushalmi, I'll get part of the way there, but I won't be able to get all the way there. Says the Yerushalmi, Nishtayr Sham, Tzeimem Arba. Oh, let's get that into Tzeimem Arba Teshuim Arba Ruchos. Now here, besides that, we have 4 ninths. Well, how do we get 4 ninths? Look at this. We have a third, and a third, and a third, and a third. We have four. We have 4 times one, a third by a third. So a third by a third equals, what's 1/3 times 1/3? 1/9. And times 4 equals 4 ninths, right? So we managed to get from this corner an additional 4 ninths. So actually now we have 49.93 and a third plus 4 ninths, which equals 4993 and 7 ninths. Right? Because 1/3 is 3 ninths, plus 4 ninths is 7 ninths. So now we're missing 6 2 ninths. Okay? Says Yerushalmi, that's what I'm now missing. Nishtayr Sham Tisha Sar Talusin Chaser Chua. So now I'm missing, which is equal, trust me, I made the cheshbon on this before, that the Yerushalmi says it's 19 and a third minus 1 ninth. Okay? You gotta trust me on this, but this is the same thing. We're missing now 6 2 ninths, which is equivalent is 19 thirds minus a ninth. That's what we're missing. Because before we're missing 6 2/3, which is 20 thirds, right? We made up 1/3 by getting 3 ninths, right? So now we have 19 thirds, right? We're missing 19 thirds. We still have 1 ninth left, so now we're missing 19 thirds minus 1 ninth, which is 66 2 ninths. Okay? I know it's exciting. So says the Gemara, it'll take some space, that's good. That's how we should learn. There's an additional amount over the 72 thirds to make up those 19, those 6 2 ninths. The Chachamim could not precisely determine what that was. Okay, so when you get the square root of 5,000, it's an irrational number, slightly above 70 2/3. Okay? Karp of Sheish Boveit.
They just basically rounded it off.
Right. They rounded off the Chumrah, slightly less, 72 thirds. Karp of Sheish Boveit sign. Now here's a very interesting thing. The Shuri Korban says, even though somebody argues on him. Who argues? The Gillian Ashaf. But Reb Chaim Kanievsky agrees to the Shari Korban. This is not very exciting, but it's an interesting point. Exactly based on a sign. If it's exactly based on a sign, the Bavli holds that that's okay. Yerushalmi holds it's not okay. That's what I'm about to say. Karpav Sheish Bo Midas sign, exactly. Ein Mutze Taltabo El Arba Amos. You can only carry their 4 amos. Because exactly base time is like above his base time. Hayu Shnayim. Now what if they're 2 adjacent to each other? Bezeh Beisah and Bezeh Beisah. Now there's a way to go between the 2 of them. Lieberman says there's a mechitza grua, we're talking about but like a shiur where there's staves between the 2 of them. But it doesn't really matter. You have 2, one next to the other. Right? Two karpefos. Hayu Shnayim. Bezeh Beisah, Bezeh Beisah, this is a Beisah. Who Bezeh Beisah Chaser Arba Amos. This is a Beisah minus 4 amos. So actually between the 2 of them, they're 4,996, not 5,000. So Rabbi Zira B'Shem Re'yon said, Metalfin B'Sheni Tashlumin L'Rishon. You can carry the second one as if it's the Tashlumin, as if it's tacked on to the first one. Because altogether you have less than 49.96. What's the problem? Then 5,000. No problem. You can carry as much as you want. However, Rabbi Law, our old buddy, Rabbi Law, B'Shem Rabbi Yonah says, Eim Talk B'Sheni Tashlumin L'Rishon. You can't. He makes a zero. He says, it's too close to 5,000. And therefore, since in 5,000 I wouldn't be able to carry more than 4 amos, so to now that it's, even though it's less than 5,000, since it's close to 5,000, I can't carry more than 4 amos. Okay? Rabbi Lo B'Shem Rayon said, now, Rabbi Zira said, Rabbi Lo concedes, if there are 3 in a row, 1, 2, 3, one with Beisah, another with Beisah, and a third with the Beisah, that you can carry from one to the other, right? He agrees you can go into the second one. Why is that? Because he says you're not going to make a mistake. Why are you not going to make a mistake? Because you see that there's a third one. So you'll know, to remind you, I have to make sure there's the proper amount here, slightly less than a base. This is like going to jog your memory. That's the way the Korban Eda and the Reb Chaim Kanievsky say, which is very dochuk. But the Lieberman gives a much nicer shot. He says, once you have 3, he says, we're talking about a shayora. When you have 3, Mr. Zuger, when you have 3, one next to each other, then you have 3 people here. 1, 2, 3. If you have 3 people, those are 3 people. 1, 2, 3. If you have 3 people in the shayora, then how much do you give them? 6. 6 base. Each get 6. They get 6 of the saw. They get double the amount, right? 2 people only still get a base saw, but 3 people already get more than a base saw. They get 6 saw. Base saw kolechot ve'echot. So therefore, that's why when they're 3, you're allowed to carry from one to the other, even to the third one. Why is that? Because once they're 3 people and they're adjacent to one another, and there's a way to get from one to the other, then they're like a shayur, and you give them much more, and there's no problem. Okay? Karper sheyesh b'beis sign. Now here's a very interesting Gemara. Name close.
Basis means less than.
Yeah, going by Yerushalmi means up to it, but not included. Here's Karper sheyesh b'beis sign. Here you are. Here's Rosh Hashanah. Here you are. You toss something into the karpaf. Are you chayav chatos? The Bavli says straight out, you are. Of course, it's a walled area. Yerushalmi agonizes over this. Okay?
You're standing where in Rosh Hashanah?
Yeah. And you throw into enclosed karpaf. So the Bavli holds that's a Rosh Hashanah deraisa, Rosh Hashanah deraisa. The Rosh base sign of a karpaf equals Rosh Hashanah deraisa. So of course, if you toss something from Rosh Hashanah into there, you're chayiv. Even though you know how to carry it more than 4 amos. It's still true. This Bavli does agonize over it. I take it back. Bavli does also agonize over the same issue. But the bottom line is there's Shusaya Deraisa, you throw into the base of Saim, you're chayiv. Now, Yerushalmi is going to discuss it. Kaim Shesh Bar Beis Saim, Omrei Avo, Helvu, Roy Latour. So it's slightly. So it's sorry here. It's up to a base of Saim. You're right. I'm sorry. Slightly less than a base of Saim. Here it's not about more than Beis Hasayim yet. I apologize. It's about slightly less than a Beis Hasayim. Karb sheshbo ad Beis Hasayim. Amrei vohovu roy laturei de shayora. Since if there's a caravan there, they're allowed to carry in the karpaf. V'zorak mishus harayim l'tocho. No, it's even more than Beis Hasayim. How does be a mistake here? Because even if it's more Beis Hasayim, because if it's a shayora, then even more than a Beis Hasayim you're chayiv. Yeah, so the Korban Eidah says, if you look at Korban Eidah, it says, it's talking about a karpa which is a Beis Hasayim. Shu Beis Hasayim, and Beis Hasayim is more than a Beis Hasayim. So it says ad, it means from above a Beis Hasayim up to a sheer Beis Hasayim. So even though an individual may not carry here, because it's too large, since a caravan can, so therefore, if you toss something from Rishus HaRami to Rishus HaYachid, chayev. Says the Gemara, ooh, wait a second. So you're defining Rishus HaYachid based on whether you're allowed to carry there. Or saying since a caravan is allowed to carry there, so therefore it's as if it's a Rishus HaYachid. Says the Yerushalmi Eruvin,
the issue isn't so much completely carried. The issue is the comparison to the fact that the shayara makes it a rishir.
Right, but in other words, he's saying there's an additional factor which is necessary besides the walls. Okay. That there must be somebody who's allowed to carry there. And he says, I don't like that. Says Shmuel Rav Yitzchak, boy, tirtzu shayara le'asor esor. If you want to use the parameters of a caravan to make it usher, in other words, meaning that there is no caravan you can't carry there, that you can do. But a chayav chatas ain't got. But you cannot define whether your chayav chatas based on whether a caravan can carry or not. In other words, the parameters of caravan are tacked on by Rabbanan to asur carrying in an enclosure, even though it's Shutza Yochid Daraisa. That has no impact, he says, on whether it's Rishus Chayav Chatas or not. It's totally divorced from that. And I'll bring you a raya, and this raya is very critical. Me'atzo, according to your line of reasoning, Mavli Shekros Malam Esri. If you have a Mavli, which has a Korah which is above 20 amos, Hovlu Kosher Al Daiti Rav Yehuda. Now, according to Rav Yehuda, a Mavli above 20 amos is kosher. Now, I want you to know, before I go into this, the disciple's son says, I don't know why we're bringing in Rabbi Yehuda on this. We could have just given a Mavli to regular Korah below 20 amos. But he leaves it shver. He says, Sarachin, I don't know. But and it's a very important, I don't have an answer to that either. It's a very basic question. I don't know the answer to that. But what we're going to see from here is much more fundamental than that. Mavli Shekos Malam Yasim. You have a Mavli which has 3 walls and has the Korah above 20 amos. However, kosher al daita Rav Yehuda, since it's kosher according to Rav Yehuda, even though it's above 20 amos. The next 2 words are a mistake. The Korban Eidah takes them out. V'zarek Rishus HaRami l'socho. If you throw from Rishus HaRami into it, are you chayev? Now it's an amazing thing. Says the disciple's son. This is a riot to the Rambam. The Rambam holds in order to make Suzuka, in order to make Rishus HaYachid Daraisa, how many walls do you need? 3, right? The Rambam holds you need 4. And this is his source, says the disciple's son. Says, because what does it say here? It says, listen, the Yerushalmi is trying to say that the permissibility to carry is not the same as making flame Rishus HaYachid. And how's the Yerushalmi saying that? It's saying that, listen, if you have 3 walls plus a Korah, you're allowed to carry within the enclosure, but that's not Rishus HaYachid Daraisa. So you're not chayav chatas if you toss something from Rishus HaRabim into it. So what does the Yerushalmi clearly say? What makes Rishus HaYachid Daraisa? 4th wall. So it's very basic than very different than the Bavli, and this is mamish to what the Rambam holds. That 3 walls plus a Korah, it's not Rishus HaYachid Daraisa. No. That's a Carmelist Daraisa, and Chazal allowed you to carry there. And that's what the Yerushalmi is saying too. 3 walls plus a korah, that's you have permission to carry, but that doesn't make Rishus Yachid. So to here, looking at whether you're allowed to carry in the karpaf or not has nothing to do with whether it's a Rishus Yachid or right or not. If it's got 3 walls, it's not. If it's got 4 walls, it is. Okay? Very fundamental Yerushalmi. Similarly, I bring another proof. Mavi shenifratz yoser me'aser. A mavi which has an opening of more than 10 amos. Holy Princess Mav Mavli Aldaita Rabbi Yehuda Mishlosh Esrei. So it's quite Rabbi Yehuda, the maximum opening of a Mavli is not 10 amos, unlike we hold. It's 13 amos. If you throw from Rishus Harabim into it, just because it's got 3 walls and it's less than 13 amos? Of course not, right? Because it doesn't have a 4th wall, even though you're allowed to carry there. Because the opening is less than that which forbids the mavli. Nonetheless, it's not a Rishus Yachid or Raisa, it's only Karmelis Raisa. So we see that Yerushalmi is saying 2 things. A, permissibility to carry is divorced from the concept of Rishus Yachid and Rishus Harabim. Well, of course, it can't be Rishus Harabim. It's divorced from the issue of Karmelis and Rishus Yachid. B, a Rishus Yachid requires 4 walls. Okay? Chotzer Shibsuchel Karpov, and Chotzer which is open, new issue. Also, the Yerushalmi, Lieberman brings down here the Yerushalmi, a very fundamental Yerushalmi. Completely argues in the Bavli. Chotzer Shibsuchel Karpov. You have a Chotzer which opens into a Karpov. Okay, here's your Karpov. Imagine there was no wall here. Here's a Chotzer. Here's a Chotzer. Chotzer Shibsuchel Karpov. Metaltim min Chotzer Karpov. Now, according to the Bavli, you can't carry anything here. The fact that it's open ruins it. You can't carry a chotzer, normally you can carry it. Once it's open the karpaf, that's it. Says Yerushalmi, no. Chotzer psul karpaf, metaltim in a chotzer karpaf, you can carry it from the chotzer into the karpaf. Avalumi the karpaf the chotzer, but not from the karpaf into the chotzer. In other words, in this case, the chotzer doesn't lose. Even though it's open to karpaf, it doesn't lose its permissibility to carry there. It's still okay to carry in the chotzer. The karpaf, you can't carry from the karpaf into the chotzer. That's certainly true. The karpaf was us to begin with. Now that it got open, the chotzer didn't get better, right? It retains its prohibition. The chotzer was permitted. Now that it's open, you can carry even into the karpaf. You just can't carry back anything. Okay? It's an amazing concept.
Yeah, it's strange.
It is very strange.
You would think that it changes its nature by being open to...
Right. That's what we think. Right. Yerushalmi points out that the Yerushalmi logic is different. Yerushalmi's logic is that it retains its permissibility. Rabbi Yehuda, obviously, if we had a more profound insight, we can understand somehow that the Yerushalmi has a different concept of walls than we do. I mean, just like the Yerushalmi requires 4 walls to make Rishus Yachid, not 3, so to the Yerushalmi holds that, on the other hand, even if something is open, it doesn't necessarily automatically become the other Rishus. So one would have to, think and formulate some definition of walls and boundaries according to Yerushalmi, which is different than our conventional wisdom. Okay? Rabbi Yehuda Tudar Yishom Ma'u Tauta Mikarpov L'Karpov Der Chotzer. A variation on the theme. Let's say you have a karpaf over here and a karpaf over here, right? Now, if the 2 karpafos are next to each other, you'll be allowed to carry from one to the other because they're all one rishus, right? From the karpaf to the chotzer, you can't carry, right? But what about, can you carry from the karpaf through the chotzer to the other karpaf? In other words, since the end result is that it goes from karpaf to karpaf, is that okay? Even though you went to a chotzer in the middle, Yerushalmi doesn't come to a conclusion. Next Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda says even if the karpaf only has within it a dugout or a trench or a cave, that's already considered being mukaf l'dira. Big kula. Doesn't need a true dira. V'talchim b'tocha. Rakiva Omer afilu ein ba'achas mikol. Even better. You don't need any of these. You could still carry uvachetei shivim v'shirayim al shivim v'shirayim. Remember, Rabbi Yehuda, even for a base of sign, requires some hukaf l'dira. So he's saying, listen, I require hukaf l'dira, but I got a great cooler for you. A trench, a dugout, something that is good enough. He says, don't do me any favors. Don't be. I don't require anything. As long as it's a base of time or less, so as long as it's less than a base of time, I don't require any hukaf ladira at all, not even a trench. Okay, just an expanse in and of itself, you can carry. I have a problem with Rabbi Yehuda. It seems to be a contradiction. The Tinatamon we learned in the previous Mishnah is Karpo Koshu Samach Leir. Has to be adjacent to the city, Div Rabbi Yehuda. Because Marachein here it says it doesn't have to be adjacent to the city. On Ramana, Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says Rabbi Yehuda equates these trenches and dugouts and things as if it's next to the city because they're similar. What's the similarity? Next to the city means it's mukaf ladira. It services the city. Here also, if it services the trench or the dugout, that's tantamount to being next to the city. Okay, if the karpaf is longer than it is wide, I feel in other words, it's not perfectly square, may not carry within it. Even if it's twice as long as it is wide, the one is allowed to carry within it. Rabbi Lezer says, it was even one amma longer than its width, you're allowed to carry within it. For the plea Rabbi Yonason, this argues Rabbi Yonason. What is the argument, Rabbi Yonason? Rabbi Yonason said that we learned from the Chatzar HaMishkan. Hey, what shape was the Chatzar HaMishkan? It was a rectangle. It wasn't 72 thirds by 72 thirds. It was 50 by 100. So he can't learn out from the Chatzar HaMishkan. If he learns out from Chatzar HaMishkan, then he wouldn't be able to say that to be exactly square. Rabbi Yisrael Rafilu Orka Kishnai Barachba, since you learn out from the Mishkan where it was twice the length of the width, even if it's double the length of the width, you can carry it in it. So that's what Rabbi Yisrael learned from Chutz of the Mishkan. Vatani Kilayim. Vatani, we also learned, Pnei Moshe says this is a right. Vatani Kilayim Beruba. We also learned by Kilayim a similar concept. Actually, it should be berova, base rova, which is the minimum share of a field by kilayim. What's by the minimum share of a field by kilayim? Then, in order to have, then obviously differences when you can plant a field next to each other and stuff like that. That it's a rova. Even there too, it's true. Length doesn't have to be length and width don't have to be perfectly aligned. That's good enough. Okay, that's all for today, folks.